Hello and welcome to Prime Lenses. I'm Ian. Each week I speak to a photographer about 3 lenses that have meant something to them on their photographic journey. It's unashamedly gear chat, but hopefully focused more on the images made with that gear than performance metrics and graphs. My guest today is Dave Herring. Normally I describe a guest at this point as a photographer, but Dave has recently shed that label, preferring instead to be thought of as a creative. He produced a really interesting video about it too, explaining why he thinks of himself in that way. He's also another recent convert to the Leica system, and we get into that a little bit during our conversation, along with some work that he's doing with different partners. So, without further ado, here is my conversation with Dave Herring. Look, this is the great thing, right? Talking to real working photographers who've actually done some stuff, right? Rather than sort of social media posers who, bought all the gear, which, that's why I'm talking about it and you're doing it in part. But yeah. So how's it going? Because you've dropped a video today on the subject of dropping content.
Yeah. I try to do a video every Monday and Thursday. So today's Thursday. So yeah, video today. It's actually one of my best performing videos of recent weeks. So yeah.
You seem like you're having a lot of fun with it.
Yeah. I don't know if you saw it or not, but I'm kind of just trying to, I don't know, be every now and then release a video that's a little tongue in cheek. So
and immediately when you started and you were like, let's reduce the dynamic range, okay, and really get that filmic experience. I was like, oh, I see where this is going. And like the in-app purchases. What I worry about is that you've said some of these things out loud now. And so now they're going to there's someone in Wetzlar is going to go, well, they could do an in-app purchase like they would, I went there. Well, I went there last year and I did the tour and it was amazing. And there was the guy doing the tour told me when they launched the watches, how they weren't really sure how this was going to go. And they were partnering with someone and it was just to try something out. And he said, and they all sold out within like 12 hours and no one had even held one. And so I worry when you say about in-app purchases for an M11D, and I'm like, is this, are we going to talk again in 20 years and go, they did it? Yeah, exactly. It'd be like the end of Planet of the Apes. We'll be staring at that in-app purchase button and we'll just be like, what did you do? You damn fools. No, it's very good. But yeah, that seemed like a fun video. I think it seems like you're having a lot of fun with the channel, like after the first year. How is it for you? Because you've also changed your perspective on being a creator, haven't you?
Yeah, I think a little bit. I am having fun with it. I feel like that, it's a balance of what do people want to watch and what do I want to do. And I feel like that balancing that relationship, it's like if I just make all the videos I want to make, then I have an audience of one myself. And but I know a creator that he told me he grew a lot last year. His channel went from like 10,000 to 30,000. But I asked him, I was like, hey man, how did you go about that? He said, I just quit making videos I wanted to make. And I just made videos that I knew people were looking for. And his strategy was, I'll come back around to make videos I want to make when I hit a goal where I can do this. And I was like, that's a great idea. But for me, I would get burned out right now doing that. So I think it's a balance, and I am having a little more fun with it than I think I ever have. And it's going well.
Yeah, no, it's really cool. It's been lovely to see, actually. And it was funny because Ali put me in touch with you when I was in San Fran, I think sort of around the time you were starting.
Yeah.
Brilliant. So I've kind of watched from the beginning and it was nice that you bookended with like the desert videos, like that first desert one this year. I was just showing it to my son actually when I was getting ready for the call, and he was watching and he was looking at the town and stuff like that. It's really cool to see that, because you've switched systems since then as well. Like it's been a big year on a number of fronts, it feels like.
Yeah. It has been. There's been a lot of trying to figure out. I still feel like I'm pretty new at it. I'm let's see, 14, 15 months in. So 15 months ago, I barely knew how to efficiently edit a video. And today in color grade, and I feel like today I've gotten where I'm falling into systems that I'm comfortable with, and I've got about 100 videos under my belt at this point. And so yeah, I'm still learning though, and still trying to find ways to do things more fun, more efficiently. Audio has been a big thing lately. I've been trying to improve the audio in this room. So today's video is probably the best it's ever been. But I bought some acoustic blankets that I throw all over my floor.
Yeah.
and you don't see them, but they make a huge difference. So even little things like that, you know, still trying to figure it all out.
Yeah, it's that thing, isn't it? Of like early on, it's how do we do this, and then by the end,
Mhm.
it's just that, oh, that's just obvious. But you have to kind of find your way to navigating it. It's sort of which is
For
part of
sure.
the fun of it, I guess,
Oh,
as well.
definitely. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
What made you decide to do the channel in the first place? From being like a working, gigging photographer and doing this sort of stuff, was it a perceived gap that you thought you could fill, or was it just another like to create a new revenue stream, or how did you approach it?
Yeah, honestly, it wasn't really a gap because I feel like YouTube is crazy saturated, and
Mm,
it wasn't even a revenue stream because I didn't even see that as possibility.
right.
So what it was for me was like entering the back half to the second half of my career. I
Mm,
turned 40 last year, and with 40 on the horizon, I was like, okay, what are some things like I wish I would have known early on? And I have a lot of like independent relationships, or even here in the Bay Area, I'm like I do a lot of like creative events, getting people together, kind of like imparting some of that like wisdom to the next generation or whatever. And I was like thinking that YouTube would be a way that I could like do two things. One, like continue to be ask questions and explore
mm,
myself, but bring people that might have similar questions along. So like my transition to Leica, I documented the whole thing. Like I started making videos
mm.
as soon as I got my Q2. Before I even had an M, I started like making my videos, and that was a little over a year and a half ago. So I wanted to kind of like document that, and then at the same time, the philosophical stuff, like the creative culture stuff, like that's the stuff. That's what I really wanted my channel to be about. Was
Mm,
like, hey, like let's carry ourselves as photographers this way. So what I found though is like when I make videos like that, people aren't really looking for those videos. So what I do
mm.
now is I work the philosophical stuff into a completely, like I was in Palm Springs, right, doing this collaboration with Oberworth,
Saw that, yeah.
but I was able to talk about like whenever we go shoot, like have respect for the people. Like when you're shooting in a neighborhood, like I talk about the cultural side, the character side of it, not just like, hey, look at this cool place. No, like when you go
Mm,
to shoot, like carry yourself with respect. Like don't approach people's doors and little things like that. Like all these things that maybe a 22-year-old who's just starting photography thinks it's okay to do, and it's
yeah.
not. So
Yeah. No,
where I
exactly.
up in.
Yeah, no, I love that vibe. I think when I was reading about you, and it's one of the things I really love about doing these conversations is going and finding out about people and kind of what makes them tick. And your kind of, uh, I guess your your philosophical approach to these things and your personality is very baked in. You write about it a lot on your website. You talk about creating things every day and living your life with an open heart and kind of like being open to experiences and people. I think that's what makes you so interesting to talk to, is because you wear that on your sleeve and you put that in your videos. And I get the impression that although you want the thing to grow, you won't grow it at the expense of like your soul. You know.
No, heck no. And that's where like I don't rely on it. I don't need it. You know what I mean?
Mm,
Like
mm,
YouTube, I don't need it personally to like scratch an ego. I'm pretty secure
yeah.
with where I'm at in my life and what I've got going on. If YouTube can't shut down tomorrow, it wouldn't, I'd be bummed, but it wouldn't like emotionally affect me. And at
Mm,
the same time, like I never anticipate any revenue from YouTube. Like I never
yeah.
saw that being a thing. And honestly, I've held off in many ways. Like I've had a lot of brands reach out that I would never work
Mm,
with. And I'm not going to
mm.
take those brand deals and manipulate my channel just so that I can make a few $100s to tell you about a tripod I don't even want. You know what I mean?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So
Yeah, you don't
for
use, don't
me,
want.
yeah, like I mean, there has been some wonderful things financially that have come out of the YouTube world. Like my preset shop, I
Mm,
never saw that having traction, but yet, I mean, that has become a very big part of my life. And that was a surprise, but again, like these aren't things I necessarily like rely on to pay the bills.
mm.
And so for that reason, I don't feel enslaved to YouTube, or enslaved to a system where I'm gonna have to sell my soul to make it.
Yeah. No, and good, right? I think that's glad to hear it, really. I think the preset stuff really looks cool. Like that video you shot with your friend who's been helping you put them together on rainy days and going out and
Yeah.
doing like final tests. That feels like that's been a really big undertaking. You didn't just open Lightroom and move some sliders around.
Heck no. And that's honestly like so I would say like aside from shooting, color grading has been like my biggest thing in photography for honestly since like Lightroom version 6, like even 2011, like 12. I've always been very involved in creating my own looks. And the preset market is so weird because like most photographers buy presets. Like it's even guys that make their own stuff. Like me, I bought plenty of presets over the years. But I feel like that sometimes I'll buy a preset, even from like a person I respect, and then I'm looking at like what's under the hood, and I'm like, man, they threw this thing together for a quick buck. And it's like you leverage the influence. Like I've got 10,000 followers, 50,000 followers, 100,000 followers, and they'll buy my presets. Well, it's like I can tell you didn't really care about this, and you made it, but sales reflect that, honestly. For me, I want to make things that universally work, that work as I promised they'll work. And that's why on every video, I show how it works. And I understand that people could copy the settings and make their own just from my screen grabs. I understand that completely. But I don't care. Like, and it's like that. Like I make things. I think that's what really sells my presets is I show them, hey, look, this is a photo. You probably have similar photos. I'm clicking it. Look what it does. Here are the modifiers. Look what they do. And again, you can see the settings. You want to take them. But it's been crazy because like I never expected my preset shop to generate what it's generating right now. And it's been awesome. But yeah, I put a lot of time and effort into it.
Yeah. So do you see that growing then from here on? Like you'll maybe add to it over time, or you taking a pause on that?
Yeah, for sure. I came into 2024. So like I launched it in April of last year. So April 15th will be its 1-year anniversary. And honestly, by the fall of last year, I realized, oh wow, there's something going on here. Like this what it's generating is like pretty significant. And so as I went through the fall into the winter, I started planning 2024. And so this year has been awesome. I did that collaboration with Julie and Jerry on the Vision 3 preset. He brought that idea to me. I had never even thought about doing that, but it's been an incredible release. And then on Monday, dropping another preset with Jake Tovar, who is a very awesome film photographer from the Central Coast here in California. He's got a very unique and dialed in like version of Portra 400. He only shoots film. And but the lab that scans his film, he's worked with them for a certain look. And I have recreated that look digitally and worked with him for several months on creating his look that anyone else can use. And but it's a collaboration, like I did this with him, and that honestly gives me a ton of life. It's not just me sitting in here on Lightroom, dialing stuff. It's back and forth. It's shooting together. It's like understanding like the feeling he's putting into his photos and why certain color tones are there. And then how can I recreate that on a digital platform? And it's been really fun and really cool and really collaborative. And so that's meant a lot to me.
Oh, that's lovely. It's funny. It's only now that you're saying that I can see this kind of really collaborative person-led through line in your videos and things. Like you're quite often on screen with someone, whether it's friends or whether it's someone you're collaborating with, in a photography project, or going in a truck and into the middle of the desert and not being murdered. That looked like a lot of fun.
Well, like that's why even like my preset shop, I didn't launch it under my website. It wasn't a Dave.com, and it wasn't presets on my site. I created a name that took me out of it. You know what I mean? Like I wanted to make a storefront that could be collaborative and not centered around my name, but yet centered around something different that I could be part of, but others could come alongside and have equal partnership and ownership in it. And so like, that's even why the shop name is not my name, or it's not even on my website. It's its own entity.
Yeah, no, that's really nice. Well, you mentioned when you were talking there about film and working with people on like getting the feel that they're trying to get into film. What was the first camera you used, and how, like, because that's what I'm kind of interested in. The sort of the conceit for this is that too many conversations are only the gear, and gear is fun, right? You're surrounded by gear. I'd love to ask you about the stuff behind you, but it's like, what was it about that first camera that you held, right? That made you feel a certain way, and what was it? Good Nintendo Switch in the drawer there as well.
Oh, yeah.
See that too.
Yeah. I was looking for my first camera. I've got it in the room somewhere. It's got film in it right now.
Oh, cool.
I think it might be over here. Hold on, I'll show it to you.
Yeah.
Where did I put it? Oh, here it is. This is my high school camera.
Oh,
I got
wow.
this camera in high school when I actually lived in Germany. So Canon short shot.
Wow. Okay, so hang on.
Yep.
Same sort of thing. Where's mine? Here it is. Okay. So this Canon again, but this is the MC,
Oh, nice. Yep.
which was a point and shoot. Which, if you know your Japanese actors, was advertised in Japan by Beat Takeshi. He was in all the
Oh,
adverts from
okay.
like
Oh,
Yojimbo and stuff. Yeah, it's really cool. I
yeah.
love it. And yeah.
It's wild because like I have had this camera now since the 90s. Okay.
Mm,
And yet I turn it on and it still works great. Even the telephoto, like it goes from
nice.
85.
Wow. Holy smokes.
It still works great. And the aperture looks good. Like I've got
Yeah.
a roll of Portrait 800 in it right now.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I take this thing on all kinds of shoots still. When I was in the desert with Ansley, I used this camera.
Oh, wow.
The photos in the video were from this
Yeah.
camera. So I'm
This
still
has some
using
400 in right now. 400, 24 roll. I think it's Portra.
nice.
Yeah, I don't use it that much, but this was it's funny, they impact us because like this has a prime 35 f2.8
Mm-hmm.
and my beloved M11 has my beloved Zeiss 35 f2.8 on it because in my
Nice.
brain that's what a photograph looks like and it's just
Yeah.
hard coded into my head now.
35 is encoded into my head too.
Yeah. So what were you using the Canon for when you picked it up originally? I mean, it's presumably a point and shoot you were given as like a teenager, or did you seek
Yeah.
it out?
Okay. So whenever I was in 10th grade, my family became military and we got
Mm,
stationed to go to Europe. And prior to that, I was just, I think I was in band, normal, just musician guy. But I was like, I'm gonna live in Europe. I should probably get a camera. And so like
nice.
I got this, and this was my high school. Everywhere I went, my high school, like I played on the soccer team at my high school, and we traveled to other high schools all over Germany. Well, this camera came along. I was part of summer camp programs on my base, and we went to Italy for summer camp, and we did that kind of stuff. And so this camera came along, and so this really was like my memory maker. We took it
Mm,
when skiing in the Alps. This camera was in my pocket in the snowboarding, and it was in the pocket. And I've got photos from high school of me taking photos with this with my friends. Like this was, and here was a fun thing. My first job ever was in a like shop on the base that where you could, it was kind of like it was like an art shop, but they
mm.
develop your film there. And so part of the perks of working there was we could develop our film for free. So I constantly was like sending off rolls. I must have sent out a dozen rolls a month in high school. And that was kind of where I fell in love with it.
Oh, that's amazing. I love that you've still got it and you're still using it. That's what's
I
so cool that they
honestly, I
still
can't
work.
believe it. I can't believe
Yeah.
it that it still works. Like, but it's a testimony to the cameras that were made in the 90s. It's all
Yeah.
electronic, and it still works
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. Well, this is the same as it's an 80s model from my stepdad, complete with like AAA battery in the bottom for power and stuff. That's the thing that saved it is that like there's some
Yeah,
clever engineer somewhere thought we'll just use a standard
this has got
something.
those weird batteries in it.
Yeah. So I worry about the weird batteries. They're going to get hard to get one day.
Okay, I got on Amazon and bought like a 50 pack of these, so I'm good
Oh,
for at least 20 more years or so.
yeah, 2050, you'll start to worry. But yeah, something will fail before then. That's really
Yeah,
cool.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So when did it transition for you from being something that you kind of did for memory making to something that you thought maybe I could do this like more and maybe I could do this as my job? Like, what was that like?
Yeah, so photography was kind of always a necessary part of my life
Mm,
because I really cared more about music than I did about
mm,
photography. But like when I was in college at that point, it was no longer just about like traveling and doing stuff. I was trying to get gigs. I needed photos. My band and other musicians I was friends with, like I was the guy who took their pictures, and it was like photography helped give me the creative assets to do music. And so um then I started like as music began to like become a bigger part of my like life, and I spent about 2 years as a full-time musician out of school. Um, like the photography stuff was always how you did things when you weren't, in a season where you were like bringing in money for music. And so photography and musicians tend to photography and music tend to walk hand in hand a lot. You'll see a lot of former musicians are now photographers, or you'll see a lot of good musicians carry a camera around, or it's funny because even Ansley, when I was with him in the desert recently, he's like pretty proficient like guitarist as well. Like he's comes from music, and it's so funny. Like I have that in common with so many guys that I've met. They're musicians and photographers, and so the photography thing was really just a way to keep music marketing, going.
Yeah.
Until like I got old and I wasn't able to do music anymore. And now I started doing more. It was like I was still doing music and then photography, and then it was like 50-50. And then it's just over the years has become much more photography and much less music.
Yeah. Well, that's probably a nice segue onto the kind of the pretendy excuse that I come up with for these silly conversations, which is around your lenses. Because of your three, you're the second person I've spoken to today who has picked a 35 Summilux, and we can come on to a 50 a bit later on. But talk to me, because for something that's so recently come into your kind of creative arsenal, like there was no hesitation from you when we were talking about these. You were just like the 35, the 50, the 90. So what is it about that 35 Lux that just speaks to your soul?
Well, the 35 focal length is to me what a photo looks like. You just said it really well. It was funny when I grabbed this camera. I've never even really paid attention to this, but I use this camera mostly on its widest aperture, and the widest is widest focal length. The widest is a 38. I think that somehow this hard grained in my head as to what photos look like. So the 35 focal length is always like my go-to in any camera I've ever had. Okay, so the 35 Summilux though, I feel like that. Yeah, I'm sure you've heard this before, and this will be an ongoing conversation on your podcast. But there are like clinical lenses and character lenses. There's things that like when I like my Sony system, the 35 GM is incredibly sharp. It's beautiful. It's perfect. It's flawless. A flawless lens. And as I've gotten older, and I would say even just like more mature as a photographer, I want less clinical and more character. So when I was like, okay, on my Leica system, what lenses have like a ton of character while still like maintaining some commercial level of sharpness that I can like, still make, put it to work for actually working gigs, not just like, fancy or cool, dreamy portraits, but actually like shoot a ad for an automaker or something like, 35 Summilux checks those boxes for me. I feel like Leica's Summilux lenses, they have like a texture to them that it's hard to almost articulate what it is. I haven't even been able to describe it yet, but like when I shoot my Leica 35 next to my Sony 35, they both look great, but I feel like I can touch and feel the texture on the Summilux lens, and the other one's just a photo. I would even say that's more true of my 50 Summilux. But there's something about that Summilux like texture, and I rarely even shoot it at 1.4, so it's not even about the extra stop of light. There's some character inside that Leica has crafted over 60 years, 70 years into these lenses that it's very distinct, and I don't know, it makes everyday things look like art. So I love that lens for that reason.
Yeah, I saw you talking to Danny Bly, he was episode 1. You were chatting to him on Threads the other day about like shooting, sort of making the ordinary beautiful, and just the shots around your home and family time and stuff. It's really nice to see more of that stuff that's a bit less curated. It's a bit sort of just, this is what it was, this is what I made.
Well, honestly, and that's one thing I love about his work is that like every day he posts things from around his house. And the dude lives in Nebraska, right? He's not like living at the precipice of a national park or mountains, or like, has like, a ranch in his backyard or something. And he is making this beautiful work every day out of the ordinary. And I just adore that. And it's been inspiring to me, because here's the thing. I do live at the precipice of beauty. Like I'm right here in the Bay Area of California. I have the land right behind my house is 5 acres of horses. It's a horse ranch. I can walk in 30 seconds and see horses, and I've got mountains behind those horses. Well, the Diablo Hills, they're technically mountains, but they're just grass. But I've got all this beauty around me, and I'm sitting here like, I should go back to Alabama Hills. I should go, and I'm like, I have all this, and my wife, like, she is an artist herself, and like our whole house is like this really like beautiful thing that she's created. And I'm like, I should take more photos around the house. Like Danny's got me inspired to do that. And so I threw my camera, as you saw, like on 1.4 on my Summilux lens on my 50. And I've been shooting more around the house lately, just normal everyday things.
Yeah, no, that's really lovely. I think it's great to do that sort of stuff. I did a lot of it during the pandemic. That kind of forced me
Mhm.
to look inward, and I think that's when Danny and I were talking the most
Wow.
about stuff. And at the time, I was using a GR3 as my
Mm-hmm.
my main camera and sort of carrying that around because he and I talk about that and the Q a lot as kind of like counterparts almost.
Yeah.
My belief that f2.8 is enough, and his belief that like yes, but macro shots at 1.7 of coffee also look really nice.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah. These days, I'm just an M person on my
Yeah.
digital cameras. I try and
Me too. Me too.
just go one.
I've gotten rid of my Q, and I'm just
Mm,
an guy. Yeah.
yeah, I'm not jealous of his close focus. It's fine. I can live without it. It'd be all right. Just slap a longer lens on it.
Yeah.
So what? So you've got the preset stuff coming. You've got the kind of the more videos and stuff. Do you plan to kind of is collaboration the route for you? Like more things like that to try and like what excites you? Because you also made a video earlier this year about changing your perspective as a creator, as a creative. Has that
Mhm.
changed the kind of projects you're going to take on? Presumably, you're still doing commercial work to kind of
Yeah,
pay bills.
a little bit. I'm not doing what I was. Like
Hmm,
I have some ongoing like major clients that I've got long relationships with, and I'm still doing things for them. Like one of them, like, and they're kind of like things that align with me personally. Like I love the nonprofit world, and
hmm,
for that reason, one of my biggest clients here in the Bay Area is a animal shelter, and they have dozens of locations around like like California in general, but
right.
they have 13 here in the Bay alone, and then expanding out around the Bay, they have a dozen more. So every month I'm doing like a paid shoot. That's like a commercial shoot, but like,
Hmm,
it's something that I love working with nonprofits. And so that I'm not gonna like just up and quit on them.
sure.
And but like I was kind of looking at okay, here's what I need to make every month. Um once the presets started meeting where that number,
Hmm,
I was
right.
like, okay, then why would I book a shoot for a day and a half when I could stay home with my family
Hmm,
and make the same amount of money while playing Zelda because
sure.
because of the preset shop. You know what I mean? So that was
Yeah.
honestly the driving thing for it. And switching that commercial work up a little bit, like I've been able to I'm being much more choosy about like who I'm working with, what kind of projects I'm saying yes to. I used to have to say yes to a lot of things I didn't want to say yes to, but I was like, okay, well, I need
Hmm.
something this month. And now it's more just like, okay, that's a cool thought. That's a cool idea. Yeah, I can see myself doing that. But for the most part, I would say like I'm doing maybe one commercial thing a month right now.
Right. Oh, nice. And are you finding that you want to mentor people? You mentioned like paying it forward a little bit. Yeah, you're doing more of that.
Yeah, and I've been doing that for a while,
Mm,
for years, and I feel like I'm trying to be more intentional with it. There's like passive mentoring that happens through YouTube, or even just like
yeah.
my DMs every day. I get questions about this or that, or how I do this or whatever, and my even through my website, emails come to me several times a week, and those are all, and I respond to everything. I'm not going to be that guy who's like too good to like write somebody back. And so I have that kind of passive like spreading of like what I've learned through experiences or whatever, but then I've got a few key people in my life who actively like I spend time with on the craft, and like
Mm,
I'll call them up for a shoot, to have them come with me. In fact, I met a guy last night in Oakland who was like, hey, if you ever like have any more shoots, like I'd love to, like when you're shooting again, like just call me up, I'll come, I just want to like learn. And I was like, absolutely, why would I not, like why would I
mm,
retain that information? So
yeah.
I'll bring that guy along, so I get active opportunities like that as well, and I love that stuff.
I think that's changing as well because when I started doing photography, a lot of people were very cagey about what
Yeah,
they
I hate
did.
that stuff.
It seems odd. It's sort of protective. It's like there's not room or something for everyone to do this. And like I'm not looking to turn it into my work and my life. Like but I'm interested. Like surely just share it. But I feel like that's definitely changed in the last 10 years. I think people are
It's
more
funny
open.
because I had a guy reach out to me, I think it was in 2022, and he asked me some questions, right? And I was like too much to type. So I ended up like doing a voice message. It was through Instagram. Just did like a voice. I recorded myself, what I'd say back, and gave him the advice he was asking about. And he wrote me back. He sent me a voice message back. And like, it really marked me what he said. He thanked me for sharing it. And he was like, it was really cool that you'll share this with your future competition. I was like, first off, bro, like,
That's
but
confidence.
that mentality though, like irks me to death because I'm like, my competition isn't anybody other than me. I'm my own competition. My apathy, my laziness, my burnout, those are my competition. I compete with that stuff. You know what I mean? Like, I'm the only one that can make what I make. You're the only one that can make what you make. And like, yes, there is a limited number of opportunities for paid work, but I also believe that like companies choose people to work with based upon will I enjoy working with this person? There's a million people that can make that same photograph. But if you're not like someone that people want to make something with, then you're never going to get a gig. Never. And if you're difficult, if you're drama, if you're conceited and you're not flexible, you're not open to feedback, like those are the people that will get on the keyboard and complain about, competition in photography. The people that are actually making it out there are focusing more on their character as a creative than they are, or as much as they are focusing on their craft.
Yeah, and heaven knows there's a bunch of those, like you were saying, YouTube and Instagram are heavily saturated with people who sort of just put it down to f1.7 on the point and shoot they've just bought and go, and it's sort of it's no, it's not the best. So how's that M11P working out for you?
Oh, I don't have the P. It would have been
Oh, do you
beautiful
not
to
have the P? It was just the
have.
M11. I said
Just the M11, yeah, just the M11, yeah.
just
Pity me, yeah.
just a 60 megapixel.
No, I know. Like I bought my M11 a few months before the P came out, and I was getting a lot of messages. I can't believe you bought one now. The P is about to come out. And I was like, look, at the end of the day, like the P would not do any different photographs.
No, exactly.
It's not, and so like, and I needed something that month. I got it. You know what I mean?
Yes.
My M10R was getting replaced or needed to get repaired. I needed something. I had gigs. I needed something that worked, and I will say I do love that top script. Love it. It's so beautiful. But I can't switch camera systems for a font,
No, completely. I'm very much the same. A used one came up and I was like, yes, that is the one. I had a 10 at the time. And I think like you, although I haven't made as many videos about it, like I had a very complex relationship with the 10 versus the 11. Because the 10 did have magic in it. There was something about
it was so similar to the film cameras, like the experience of it. Like, it's
the bottom plate, and
when people ask me all the time about getting into Leica, and they're like, should I get an 11 or something older? I'm like, get a 10. Like, unless you need that level of like megapixel, or if you have the money. If you have the money, get an 11. But if you're just trying to get into a system, like I would tell you, if you've got $10,000 to spend, get a 10 and get like a Summilux lens, then get it, or don't get the 11 and get like a TT Artisan's lens.
Because the lenses will come with you. Like in theory, you're going to land there, you're going to enjoy it. It's really funny. I've noticed because I was in San Fran last year for work, and I went into the store and saw Wayne and the guys in there and had a chat with them. And my strap broke actually whilst I was at this conference, so I had to go back in and buy another strap. But it was great. The minute you say that you have a 10, because at the time I had the 10, they fall over themselves. You go, oh, it's a great system. It's really good. And it's funny, people in Wetzlar said exactly the same thing when I was there. It's like, I think that one, they knew they cracked it. There was something happened with the 10, like the size was right, the bottom plate felt the same, and the width, and everything just everything clicked in a way that the 11 is better in just about every way. It's like it's faster, the ability to crop in and still have a usable image. The weight saving on the black one is really meaningful. Like
the battery life. The battery life
just and I left the house the other day without a memory card in and didn't notice until I got home, and then realized, oh, I'd left the memory card. So all that stuff and the GPS tagging, it all just works really, really well. But I'm not sure I love it in the same way. And that's so stupid and privileged of me. But but it's funny. Sometimes there's a certain version of a certain thing where you're just like, no, this obsesses me.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's not quite under my skin. I feel like switching from the 11 to the 12 or whatever inevitably in the future at some point will be easier than going 10 to 11 was. I really
Yeah.
kind of did some hand wringing over 10 to 11.
Well, and I resisted the 11 until I couldn't resist it because, I needed, I had
Yeah, you
work.
just needed something. Yeah.
But now that I've been with the 11 now for about August of last year, so whatever that turns out to be, I feel like the 11 has grown on me. I didn't love it at first, but the battery life has been the biggest thing that's impacted me. I used to carry 4 batteries for my M10R, 4 to do a day shoot. I would get, if I'm out on a full day of a project commercial shoot, I'm shooting around 1,000 images with the intent to deliver 60 to 100. I'm a classic overshooter. So that's the beauty of digital, right? So, but yeah, I would get through about 300 shots or so on a battery, and then it would just crap out on me. The M11, I did a video when I first got it in Olympic National Park. And I shot all day, 2 days in a row. And I remember the first day after shooting the entire day, I got to my Airbnb and I looked at the battery and it was like 70%. And I was like, oh my God, I couldn't even believe it. And so I didn't even charge my camera that night. I shot it the second day and I left Olympic after 2 full days of shooting at like 35%. I was completely shook. Like I was fascinated. So that's been the biggest thing for me is like, I know I can go out and not even think about the battery.
Yeah. Another thing that's really great with travel is the USB-C charging is such a game changer as well.
100%.
Like so much easier to live with.
I
travel now with 1 brick.
Yeah, me too. The phone, the camera, and even like I had like now, especially on YouTube, I still bring my Sony kit when I'm doing video. And that's USB-C. The Leica is USB-C. My phone is USB-C. I have this like brick that has 4 USB-C ports on it.
Yes, perfect.
Bring that, plug it in, 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm good to go.
Yeah, everything's going. No, I'm the same now. It's fantastic. It's taken far too long to get to that point, but yeah, that's the thing. That's one of the things that keeps me there. Is like I travel a lot for work, and so you can never go back. It turns out, Dave, you can never go home.
Turns out, done.
So in your bag when you're traveling, then you've got your 35, you've got your 50. Where does the 90 fit into this? I'm interested because it's funny. We have the same lens split, right? Like I have other ones around the edges, but the ones in the bag, usually at least 35 and 50, 35 on the body, 50 in the bag, and then 90 for those special occasions. But I'm curious because you chose specifically the Sumerit.
I did. And that'll tell you a couple of things. First off, the 90 is not incredibly important to me. So I don't want to drop a ton of money on it because I don't use it as often. The thing about like a 90 is like, especially with landscapes, before I started shooting Leica on my Sony kit, I had a 35, a 50, and a 135 were my go-to. My 85 stayed home. I never took it out. I brought my 1-400 out when I was doing something in wildlife or whatever, but with wildlife. But the 135 I used a lot on my Sony kit because, like, I at the end of the day, I love like landscape and adventure photography. And when we think about that genre, we automatically think wide, right? Because we want to capture this whole thing. But there's something about like getting some layers of compression that give you a new perspective on like the earth and like the landscapes. And just going out, like for instance, if I'm in Death Valley, I can get great shots of the sand dunes with the mountains in the background. But if I put a long lens on, I can not only get one sand dune with a giant mountain behind it, but I can see the people on the sand dune as well. And I've got some shots like that that are awesome that I shot on the 135 when I used to shoot Sony. And like I want something long enough to at least get me into that ballpark. 90 is kind of on the bottom end of what I think that that range should be. I've tried the 135 Apo. I rented one. I guess it was back focusing, so I didn't really get a good experience with it. But they credited me back, which was nice. But but I keep the 90 for that reason, for any type of compression shots or even portraits with compression. Like the Sumerit is a fairly inexpensive Leica lens, and you know, there's definitely cheaper 90s out there. But the Sumerit, it's a 2.4, and which isn't, you know, that's a weird aperture on the bottom end, but that's what it is. But it's not very big. It's easy to travel. It's actually, like, without the lens hood on, it's the same size as my 50. I keep the lens hood on a lot of times. Let me take it off real quick so you can see.
Yeah.
My 50. I'll put them side by side for you. The Sumerit, I bought it at the Leica store in San Francisco for like $900. It's not it's not an expensive lens.
Yeah.
But take the bottoms off too. This is my 50, and this is the Sumerit. They're only millimeters different. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, you know, and the 90 is just a great size. Have that level of compression. So that's ultimately why I'm carrying the 90 around.
Yeah, I have a 90 Voigtlander 2.8, which is really, it's got a really nice character to it, like the way it renders. I think I get the impression 90s, I was reading some stuff about them, that maybe they're not as hard to make to some extent as some of the other ones as well, which is why everyone makes one, and they're usually not too expensive. But yeah, Wayne at the store got in my head a little bit about Leica glass versus other people's glass. I had to kind of like unlearn that over the course of a year. It made me part with a lens that I loved and then have to get back. But no, it's having a 90 in the bag's handy. When you were shooting Sony, then that 85, was that the 85 1.8?
Yeah. Oh, no. So it was. Wait a minute, is that the GM one? It was whatever the GM is.
It was the non-G I had.
Yeah, I had the GM one, the 1.4. But the problem with that lens is that's like one of their earliest GM lenses. The focusing was always misfocus. I hated that lens. Like, it's like it would be right on the money, and then I would, you know, fire a few off, and they're not focused, and it would drive me crazy. So the 135, the Sony 135 GM is probably the best lens they've ever made. It is like sharp, beautiful. I mean, 135 at 1.8 is like this really beautiful look, especially for portraits. It's an incredible lens.
Well, combined with that autofocus system as well, where it's going to pick out your eye perfectly every time. Because I think that's I like what you were saying earlier on about not seeking perfection as you move on in your career, like stuff that's out of focus with a bit of movement and a bit of, you know, I saw an exhibition of fashion photography when I was in Stockholm last year, and it was like blown up photos of like Cindy Crawford, Naomi Campbell, and people like that. And when you look at it and you realize when it's blown up to the size of like a sort of a 10-foot wall, and you're like, actually, there's a fair bit of shake in this, and there's a fair bit of, but it's capturing it. It's the emotion and what the person is doing and the story that the person's trying to tell that just means so much more than, you know, having an A9 that can focus on a breakdancer's foot and do like 100 frames a second or whatever, you know?
Right, exactly. And there's a place for that stuff if you need that stuff. They are just tools, but like the work I do, you know, I want to definitely tell more like emotional stories and like make you feel something rather than like make you. I don't want you. If you have to pixel peep my photos, then you're looking at the wrong photographer, you know?
So, yeah, well, you've missed something for sure. Yeah. Have you ever put together books of your work?
I have not. I've actually got a collection that I would like to put in a book one day, but books I feel like are so expensive to make, and unless you have the ability to sell those books at a certain volume, it's just not feasible, unfortunately. And so like right now, like I have a title of a project. I have a lot of the photos for that project already taken. I'm just waiting until I feel like I can sell the volume I would need to sell to at least break even. Breaking even would be
so. Of course. Yeah. That's it's got to pay its way, hasn't it? Really, it's got to cover its costs. One of my future guests is actually a guy called Dan Milner from Blurb, who is their creative evangelist, like a former photojournalist, and so Blurb might be the kind of thing, I guess, that like at least lets you make something and experiment with sequencing and that sort of stuff. I want to make a book, but I'm also conscious that I don't want to take on something that's so complicated and so big, and you'd want it to be right. That's the
Yeah,
challenge.
yeah,
You know, you'd want it to be right first time, and it won't be. So you've got to learn, you know, the
yeah. And
first.
I'm not like that far into mine either. Like I have
Mm,
a folder in my Lightroom library that's the title of my book. And as I find images, and I mean, I've got, years and years of images at this point, but
mm,
that it's it's got enough in it right now that I can make this book, but I'd have to sequence it still and then edit it for print, which is a different world
mm,
than editing for screens. And so
of
like,
course.
there's a lot of work ahead to make that a reality. I'm thinking maybe if I ever get my YouTube channel to a certain point, I'll,
Yeah.
I feel like I've got a big enough, crowd that will like support this thing. I'll do it. But otherwise, like, it's just going to be a project, hopefully in the future.
Yeah, Danny made a book. He made a book of found photos
Yeah.
that he picked up at like a flea market or something, and he took months editing that thing together, and then made 50 of them. And I think that experience has made him not want to do it again. So it can kill.
It's funny about found photography. I actually have this little passion hobby I don't ever talk about. But what I do is, let me show you this.
Mm.
I haven't done these yet. I get on eBay and I buy found film from European countries.
Oh, nice!
So this is my latest batch. Okay.
Wow.
It's all like this one. I think this whole batch came from Hungary. Most of this film, when I see that it's 24 exposures, that tells me most of it's from the 80s and 90s. What I do though is I develop film at home, and when I've got one roll to develop, but my tank can do two, I let one of these ride along, and then
Yeah.
I'll scan them and see what they are. And I have found some wacky stuff, man. Like, so I've got a collection, a whole library I've been building up for about 2 years of found film. I probably have 200, 300 shots right now of like cars in Europe, or like
Yeah.
family vacations from like a family in like Romania going to Russia, and that kind of stuff.
Wow.
So I've got a whole thing maybe one day, but I just picked up this a few weeks ago. And
Yeah.
found on eBay. I paid $10 for this. Like,
That's amazing.
now I'll say like probably a third of
Yeah.
the rolls don't have it. Like they're gone. You know what I mean? The photos have
Yeah.
set too long, or whatever. But I can show you some stuff that's really cool sometime.
Yes. Oh, it's amazing. That's got to be the book, man. That
I
has
know
to be it.
that's a separate project. Yeah, that would, I think that'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It's like as a US citizen, it's fun to get this stuff from Europe. Like,
Mm.
because I'm seeing things that like I would have never seen. I would have never seen Russia in 1994. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like
Yeah.
things like that. So it's been pretty cool.
Oh, that's so brilliant. Yeah, that's got to be the thing, because the fascinating thing, because presumably you get no background with any of those. It's just a bag of.
That's it's crazy because like one of my roles I developed was somebody in Germany. It was a role from Germany. It was a retirement party, and I could tell it was a retirement only because of like the like background stuff they had up, and I'm translating. I'm like, what is this?
Yeah.
And like it's some guy's retirement, but I'm like, what happened to this guy and his family that this photo ended up in a batch of rolls on eBay? Like so weird. I wish I knew. You know what I mean? I wish I could. It's like part of me is like, man, I would love to just start like an Instagram of all the shots I've been finding and say like tag your family, find your family, like go viral, like find these people. So,
Yeah, it's like finding an SD card on the beach or something and getting it and posting the pictures online. Yeah. Oh, that could be a series of books in of its own, in of itself, or a documentary series, couldn't it? Of just like doing all that stuff. That's so cool.
last summer I went to an estate sale because I saw like
Mm.
someone had posted like, moving sale, the whole house is like getting sold off. And it was about an hour from me, but it was up in the mountains, like in a part of the state people aren't really in. And in the background, I saw a whole bunch of silver cameras. And I was like, let me go see what that's about. So I went there and I'm just like any other guy walking around the estate sale. This lady, it was her kids that were there. And the dad had passed away like 10 years ago. And their mom has been living alone, but she's at the point where she can't live alone anymore. So they're moving her in with one of them. So they're selling everything in the house. So I saw like 6 cameras. And then also in that same box were about like 20 rolls of Ultramax that had never been shot. And then there were like another 20 rolls that the spool was inside. So I was like, hey, you got all this film here and all these cameras, and they're like various brands. They're just old film cameras. I said, what's up with these? And they told me they belonged to their father. He died 10 years ago. They've been sitting in a box for 10 years. And I was like, okay, well, if I buy all of it, you know, what would you want to do for it? And they were like, how about $50? So I was like, okay, I'll buy it.
Yep.
I was like, so I don't know if these cameras work. Why? I brought them home. There was like a Pentax ME. There was like it was like a lot of really cool cameras. And but the film has been crazy. I told them that I would develop the rolls of film that had been shot, and I would send them to them as I developed them. I developed, you know, several of them as I've just let rolls right along with. It's been really cool to let this family like rediscover some photos from there, and most of them are from the 90s. Most of them, you know, early 2000s. But what was really crazy is I shot a roll of the Ultramax when to develop it, because he had like 20 rolls of Ultramax.
Yeah.
It had photos on it. So what this guy ended up doing was he would rewind back, but not get all the way and leave the tag out, I guess, to make it easier to unspool it so he could develop it.
Right.
So I shot a roll at Ultramax, and then it was double exposed, my shots on top of like 90s photographs. And so I stopped developing them, and now I've got like a drawer over here full of Ultramax film that I don't know if there's photos on it or not. But I also don't want to like waste my chemicals right now to find out. So like,
is it all black and white then, or color?
Yeah, they could be, because like the one roll I did shoot had photos. And I double exposed them all, you know? So like, weird. Yeah. So I've got probably right now about 50 rolls of found film in that drawer till I do something with.
That's mad. I've got a few old rolls. It was a similar thing. A friend clearing out his dad's old stuff and asked for my help to put the camera on eBay. And then basically my payment for telling him not to take too little money for it was, you can have all this expired film. And I've not been brave enough to shoot it yet. I've sort of been kind of working out what to do, because some of it is really old. And so it's just a question of like, well, would it even work at this point? Is there much point even using it and developing it? Maybe, you know.
I was given some found or some expired rolls by a friend of my late uncle who had his camera and had some film from when my uncle died in 92. And in 2022, I got his camera kit. It's a lot crazy story how I ended up with it. But anyway, he sent me some of my uncle's film that had never been shot. So I mean, it expired in the 90s. So that, you know, like what you do though, the formula, it's super easy. You just add one stop for every decade. So I shot a roll of his in the mountains, in the Grand Tetons, and it turned out great. I added 2 stops for the sake of, you know, 20 years expired, and they were perfect. The film looked awesome. Nothing weird about it. Yeah.
Oh, brilliant. Okay, well, that'll be my little project. Yeah. I'll take some.
Now, it gets tricky. It gets tricky at like film that's like you got to add 6 or 7 stops to. That can get kind of tricky.
But, none of it goes back that far, I don't think. I think like you, it's 90s sort of vintage.
Add 2 stops and you'll be fine.
Yeah. Oh, brilliant. Right. Well, that's the next roll for this little guy then. That we'll put in. Yeah, that's really cool. Well, I mean, thank you so much for giving me some time today to sit and talk to you. That's been really awesome. I've really enjoyed kind of like hearing a little bit. I guess your main thing is like folks should come find you on YouTube and like presets.
My website is dave.online, and anyone that goes there can link to anything I do.
There we go. It's all in. I will say, like, you were a kind of interviewer's dream in that regard, because you share so much, and you've blogged a lot, and you've written a lot of things, and you've talked a lot of stuff about what you do. So it is really nice to kind of like get that kind of sense of who you are. I guess one question before you go, I am interested to know, because obviously you're shooting a lot with the M, you're shooting a lot of M glass and things, but you kind of seem to alternate a lot between your M6 and your M11 for digital. Which one do you kind of want? I mean, obviously digital is a practical reality. But which do you kind of like wake up and want to use? Like which one and kind of why, I guess?
The M11 is instantly gratifying and convenient and efficient. So like, I would say like, right now at this stage of my life, I really value efficiency. I've got 2 small kids. very, my wife and I are both, we own our own businesses. And so I mean, we're constantly working, like hustling our own, stuff
Yeah.
going on. This season of life, it's gonna always be digital. but
Yeah.
but what I love about film is the challenge that
Mm.
comes with, like, I mean, even simple as like loading the damn camera. Like I was shooting in Rome this summer on my
Mm.
I left the M11 at home, took the M6 out for the day, loaded up a roll of Portra 400. I was shooting all over Rome, and then I hit my 36 and I cranked it and I went to 37, and I was like, oh, I guess like I got an extra exposure. 38, 39, 40. I was like, what the heck is going on? So I
Mm.
flipped over and looked, and the tab never caught. So I shot
Oh,
a whole day. And I, like, with film, you're really selective about what you're shooting,
yeah, of course.
And I was trying to I only brought this like 2 rolls of film out for the day. And so anyway, I was so defeated. And I was like, God, like, but honestly, like, that kind of stuff happening makes film to some degree kind of exciting, because it reminds you that you're never going to arrive at the place where
Yeah.
you can't make a mistake. Like,
Yes.
I don't care.
Yes.
I've been shooting 20 years and I still misload a camera. Or
Yeah.
the number one thing that happens to me with that camera on the M6 is I forget to change the light meter when I change film. So
Yep.
I set the dial on the back. I'm going from gold 200 to portrait 800, and I forget to move the dial.
Yep. And then you're overexposing.
And I'm like, oh my God, like,
Yep.
film humbles you. And
It really does.
I feel like I enjoy that process.
Yeah. Well, it's funny on that subject. So I spoke to the one thing I'm learning through doing these interviews is that it's expensive to talk to people about cameras. So I spoke to Ben from In an Instant, and then consequently an I2 arrived very soon afterwards.
Wow.
It used it was a guy in Scotland, just effectively just down the road, was selling it, and it was an absolute steal. It had a loaded case and some film with it and everything. And I love my instant cameras. I love my as much as I have my one camera rule. Instant cameras don't seem to count towards my one camera rule, but I've learned it again with this, that like instant film, it's almost like, did you think that film was just not quite expensive enough for you? Let me introduce you to £2.50 per shot, and
Right.
the humbling is instant. You are instantly told, you're instantly reminded you can't hold it that steady as you thought you could at
That is
1/60th.
why I bought a Leica Sofort too, the new, like,
Mm.
Leica
Yeah,
thing.
yeah, yeah.
It's like okay, so yesterday I had a very cool shoot. Like, are you familiar with Black Lives Matter?
Yes, yes.
I shot the board
Ah,
portraits,
wow.
right, yesterday.
Fantastic.
So I mean, this organization, like, some, whatever people think about them, like, they're fantastic people.
Mm.
And I got to take photos of, like, their chairwoman and, like, their executive, like, team yesterday, and that was really cool. But what I've started
Amazing.
doing is I'm shooting these on Leica. I shot them on the
Yeah.
M6 and the M11. But I bring the Sofort and I wrap the headshots up. Whenever we're done, like, I take, like, a couple dozen photos of their headshots, and then I grab the Sofort and take one of them, and then I give that to them in the moment. And that
Yes.
process of giving people a photo, like
Yes.
a instant photo, man, they come alive with that. That's so exciting
Yes.
for them. So I bought it
Yes.
for that reason. But the best thing is you can pick and choose what you print with that
Yeah.
camera.
Yeah.
Because, like,
Yeah.
I took the photo, and if it was, like, not quite centered right, hey, make it one more. Then you just cock the lever and it prints it out like that. And then also you can sync over your M11 over to it. So I was able to print one of the guys yesterday. I was able to he was in love with the shot I got on the M11, and I was able to print it off on the Sofort and hand it to him in that moment. Like that, this instant has a place in photography for sure. It just, people come alive with it. They love it.
It's a magic trick still 50 years later. Like, I'm a huge Polaroid nerd, but Instax, I take them to, when we do summer parties, I always convince work to pay for some film. And then then I'm carrying it around. And now what happens at parties is, like, after 4 years of being at a company, people come and find you at parties because they assume that you'll have an instant camera,
Right.
and they've maybe this time they brought their girlfriend, like they weren't going out last year, but they're like, oh, I can get a picture of us together, and they know that they'll be able to leave
That's
with
cool.
one. And it's nice because you run around. I make it, it's nice to have a job at a party as well. Like, it's
Yeah,
nice because
yeah,
as a senior person, sometimes at these parties, like Alice can't make it, she can't come with me, so I don't really have anything to do. If it's a party where partners are going, then everyone's kind of with someone, and so
Mhm.
having a camera gives you a reason to kind of run around and keeps you
Yeah, yeah,
circulating and keeps you moving. So
yeah.
yeah, and like you say, in a completely digital age. Danny talked about this. He has the Sofort 2 as well. He
Mhm.
loves it, and it's
Yeah,
that physical thing, and like give it to a kid. Like people love it. We've got
yeah.
friends visiting this weekend. I know I'm going to burn through a ton of film.
Yeah.
Uh,
My kids, each one of my kids are 6 and 9. They each have
mhm.
their own Instax camera,
Oh,
and
cool.
and when we travel, they bring their cameras and they take pictures of things that are important to them, and they have these
Yes.
they have little books and they can put their film in it, and
Yeah.
they love that. And what I do, because of Sofort uses Instax film as well, we
Mhm.
just buy on Amazon. We'll just get like a 10 pack of 10, so
Mhm,
each kid
mhm.
gets like 100 exposures, and then I just deal them out to the kids, and I carry one around. And I'll say one more thing about the Sofort that was cool yesterday.
Mm.
Like I shot, they wanted to do a group photo at the end, so I did a group photo, and I was able to print that same photo 3 times, so I
Yes.
could hand everyone that wanted one. So that's like
Yeah.
that instant stuff is so much fun.
Yeah. No, it's tremendous. It's funny. My two are 6 and 9 as well.
Oh
My
wow,
two boys, and
yeah.
they have their own instant cameras, but I've
Mm,
messed up because the youngest has an SQ1, the square format, and the
oh, okay.
eldest has a Polaroid camera, like with the I think it was the Polaroid Now,
Mm,
which someone had dropped and they'd broken the viewfinder. But
mm.
like as we know, the viewfinder on a Polaroid camera is not doing a lot for you. So the
Nope.
fact that you can't really see through the viewfinder is kind of academic. But it's kind of like his is much more temperamental. So like the youngest is running around taking pictures and they sort of come out, and then the eldest is like, "Why is this one not working?" I'm like, "Well, it's a little bit more temperament. Like
Yeah,
Polaroid, you got
yeah,
to put it in a box for 15 minutes
mhm.
versus Instax where it's 90 seconds." And
Yeah,
you
I
can
get
see the picture and you're kind of good to go. And
yeah.
yeah. Hey, that's so thought too, though, with that USB-C charging as well.
Yes.
See,
Oh,
there
it's,
we go.
it's yep.
It's
I
really,
put a
really good.
drawer. It's funny. I made one of these drawers a power station. So when I pull it out, all it
Oh,
is
wow.
like
Yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah.
a stock, or I'm sorry, it has like I made like a little grid, and everything I have can just has a home in there, and I can just plug it in. It's all powered off USB-C. So like I have like tons of, because even my lighting is USB-C. My
Mm,
portable
mm.
lighting, my accent
Nice. Yeah.
lighting. Of course that
Yeah.
one's not, but like
Yes. The big one.
everything is USB-C, and so like I like all my camera battery charging is all in that top drawer there on a grid where everything's got a spot and it's all USB-C. Love it.
Yeah. Oh, brilliant. Well, next time I'm in San Francisco, I will bring instant film and we can we
Definitely.
can we can grab a coffee and some
I may
Polaroids
be
and
I
Instax.
may be in the UK later this year, so
Oh,
fingers
cool. Where are
crossed.
you going?
Don't know
Maybe.
yet, but I
No.
know that
Okay.
like I know I've got some collaborations like with a
Yeah.
few people like in London, and then like kind of all over. So like
Mm.
I just fly into London and go north and then go back and fly home. So
Yeah. Oh, amazing.
connect.
Well, depending on how far north you get, like, but hit me up for sure because I travel around a
Yeah.
lot and go down south as well. It would be amazing. There's almost everyone I've spoken to, with the exception of one person who travels for their job and is just everywhere. It was a MotoGP guy. It's like everyone else we've gone, yes, we should meet up and do the thing. And
Mhm.
yeah, so yeah, keep me in touch for sure. It'd be brilliant to hook up.
Yeah. Well, thanks again for
Cool.
having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. I love these conversations. That's why like doing two in a day is like a massive treat. I think I'm kind of ODing on conversations with creative people. It's brilliant.
Love that. Yeah.
Cool. Oh, well, have an amazing rest of day,
All right. You
and
too.
enjoy
Bye.
yourself.
Yep.
Take
Take
care,
care.
man.
Bye.
Bye. Huge thanks to Dave for taking the time to talk to me there. I really loved chatting to him and was delighted to hear the unexpected appearance of instant photography at the end of that conversation. Dave's so well known for his use of Sony systems for video and Leica M stuff for his stills that I really didn't expect that. It was a really nice surprise. You can rate and review this series on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts, and that'll help people to find the show. You can also sign up for a midweek newsletter that I've started doing. You can get that at ianfarrell.com/sign-up, and there is a link to it in the show notes as well. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.